六加二三是歹日子，也是小弟的日平时。
Hi, I'm Jeremy Singh, and I write for SINdie, which is one of the few websites that talk about local films. And today, I'm not going to write about films, I'm going to talk about films, something different, on this program called SINdie Life, something that we're going to introduce from now on, where we talk about films. And together with me, I've got Raymond.
Hello.
And Hui Zhen, who are also my co-writers from SINdie. And we're gonna talk about something that everybody has been talking about, but everybody just can't stop talking about, because well, it affects a lot of guys' lives, and in the last few months, it's affected a lot of women, girls, young girls, teenage girls' lives as well. No prizes for guessing. We're talking about Our Boys to Men, the movie that's grossed 14 million at the box office, but got a rating of, ironically got a rating of about 2 out of 5 stars from a lot of the local critics. Just a simple question to start off, good or bad, do you like it? Raymond, what do you think of the movie?
Well, personally, I didn't like part 1. Okay, I also didn't like part 2.
So you don't like the movie? I
don't like it, period.
but I like part 2 a little bit more than part 1. And I think that no matter how bad each part was or whatever, there were always a few scenes that stood out for me, or at least a few scenes that I liked. Okay, for part 1, there was all the scenes, which featured, I think the warrant officer or the captain or whoever, when he actually was recounting his own army days as a recruit.
Oh, the uncle.
And then there was like the nostalgia, flashbacks to the army days in the past. I actually like all those scenes a lot.
Okay. I mean, those were my favorite scenes as well.
Yep.
And just a little trivia here. I can't be totally objective about Our Boys to Men because I was personally involved in the production. I actually quit my job, for a while, to work for Jack Neo on Our Boys to Men as third assistant director. So
AKA slave.
AKA slave, running about, carrying things, doing all the menial jobs and arranging lots of dead bodies. I do have some views about Our Boys to Men, but I'd like to hear more from what this young man and this young girl has to say.
Well, I guess as a layman and a female, I don't know what exactly goes on in Tekong or how it even looks like for that matter. So the film was great in providing a kind of insider's look into army life. Spoiler alert, like how they tried to secretly smoke using pipes and tapes. It was like shisha in a sense. I also like how it drew parallels to older army practices, like the standby bed scenes were very effective.
So Hui said I both like the
nostalgia.
The nostalgic scenes.
The nostalgic scene.
It's interesting, it seems like the serious moviegoers like the nostalgia. Well, I'm sure from the feedback I heard, a lot of the more men on the street, they like the jokes, and of course the girls like the boys. And which brings me to the next question. One very obvious thing that has made the film successful is actually the hordes of young female fans who've been following the film. Joshua, the lead actor, has 35,000 likes on his Facebook, and Tosh has 25,000 likes, but of course they still lose to Xiaxue, who has 140,000 likes, but getting there. Well, surely this is a phenomenon. These boys have gained overnight success thanks to the fandom. So my question is the film just full of fandom, hype, or is there real substance in the actors? What do you think, Hui Zhen? I'd like to hear from the female.
Well, I generally think Our Boys to Men had a pretty good cast. My personal favorite is Lo Bang. He's really charismatic and he really does the Bing swagger very well. And yet he really showed that kind of vulnerability during the scene where other recruits were reading their families' letters. So I do think he has the most potential out of the lot, and I like the development between his character and Wayang. So Tosh, as for Tosh's appeal, well, I guess it is pretty suave in the way he orders the other recruits around. I guess at the end of the day, sometimes girls are attracted to men in power. But anyway, this is not a podcast about, the female psyche. So what do you think about the sexist reference though, Raymond?
Well, when it comes to sexism, I really don't like to go about, finding evidence for misogyny and things like that. Because I think that for many things, if you actually, many different areas in life, if you really look hard enough, you can actually find a lot of evidence to easily make claims of misogyny or whatever, okay? But in the case of Our Boys to Men, I think that what it was trying to do, it was trying to provide an exaggerated but somewhat true to life reflection of army life, okay? And so it included a few sexist jokes, okay? For those of you who can't remember, there are some sexist jokes, and then there are like references,
particularly
a reference to a leaf that looks like a certain part of the female anatomy, okay? So what I'm trying to say is that yes, I think what Neo wants to do, or he wanted to do, was to create a somewhat exaggerated portrait of army life that still contains certain truths to it, even though if it's exaggerated. But
I mean, I'm very curious to know, like maybe from Hui Zhen, do you see it as just a bloke movie? I mean, it's just a guy's movie, guys and their point of view, or do you think it's borderline insulting?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I agree with Jeremy. It's just a dude show, so you have to watch it on that level. Just like you would expect American Pie to have its fair share of crass, lame, and sexist jokes, Our Boys to Men will have these as well. So, as long as the jokes are used, like, just to show the camaraderie of the recruits and also to highlight, their deprivation in the jungles of Tekong, it's pretty normal and natural. So, I guess it's a stretch to label the film as sexist because, I felt they were quite funny at times. I wasn't particularly offended. In fact, with the stereotypes of girlfriends leaving army boys, right? I think Neo was quite equal in that sense because he also showed how Ken Chow's, immature fits was such a turn-off. There's a fine line between dreading the tough training and full-on kicking a rubbish bin, right? So, as in, like what Raymond said, exaggerated caricatures is what Neo does lah. So you have to take it with a pinch of salt.
I want to chime in a little bit. Okay, I need to chime in a little bit. Okay, I agree somewhat with what Hui Zhen said, but I felt like, there's a difference between trying to capture that sort of army life, capture that sort of camaraderie, and by, like inserting certain jokes in it. Okay, but I think that Neo goes a little bit too far. It actually portrayed, the way the jokes are used there is almost as if he's saying that yes, it's good to use jokes because this sort of jokes will help you bring you closer to your army mates. So I think there's a very distinct difference there, and I can understand why people will feel that it's sexist. Personally, I didn't really choose to see it that way, but I think that it's a valid criticism. I don't think that it's entirely invalid.
Some of the most unkind things that have been said about the film are, of course, that the film is just propaganda. It's like an extended SAF TV commercial. How true is that?
You cannot say that it's propaganda, right? Because you are on.
Well, I'll tell you what I feel later. I'd like to know what do you think?
Okay, I know that Jack Neo said that, this movie isn't propaganda, but just because he didn't intend it to be propaganda doesn't mean it isn't. I think that he has very good intentions. I think he set out, to make a compelling and hilarious portrait of army life. But I think it came off being very close to being propaganda, or in many sense it actually is propaganda because they actually conflated this boys, or this young adolescent's personal journey towards maturity with the embracing of national service. So it's trying to say that, okay, if you want to be a good citizen, you want to be a mature adult, okay, you have to embrace national service. You have to do your part because national service changes you. It makes you a better person. So that's my problem. I felt that it was bordering in selling a message that NS is good.
Well, as for me, I'd like to comment on something that's slightly relevant to propaganda, but it's more propaganda for the different brands that Neo featured in the film, which is the issue of product placement, right? I mean, like, that has been such a contentious topic. So, actually for me, I know Jeremy has a lot to say about the KPMG cyclists.
Oh yes, they spent a long time with us in the rain. on the Benjamin Sheares Bridge. Yeah, I mean, as much as we depend on them, I feel there has to be some way to draw the line between endorsing them for their support, as well as still maintaining the aesthetics of a good film. And I felt that particular scene where you saw the logo of that particular company basically killed one of the most poignant moments for me in the film.
The moment when he was crying and screaming in the rain.
Yeah, even the rain came on cue. I mean, the heaven was on our side, helping to make the scene more realistic. And there you have it. There you had like the company logos puncturing that moment for me.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, that scene was so shameless and ridiculous, but in a way for me, I feel that retardedness actually kind of fits into Neo's aesthetic, as in it's just made the whole idea even more slapstick and insane. And I think when you talk about product placement, it's easy to talk about selling out and, all of that, but I actually really like the Wisma Atria Food Republic scene, the one where Neo actually took the audience out of the film for a while and showed the army tanks coming up the escalators and whatnot, all the special effects. So it was nice for me to see like that familiar space in a different light.
But propaganda or not, what I see, I mean, the issue I see is something beyond propaganda. I mean, the flaw that I see in the movie. I mean, it's very clear that it's a movie that tells you, NS is not a waste of time. That Singapore may go to war someday and we need national service. But actually, what I feel is a little more unsettling for me is something that I also see in a lot of other Jack Neo movies, that he tends to preach too much. He tends to like to turn his films into little moral education lessons, which I sometimes hope he would do less of, and hence, I mean, Our Boys to Men, taking away the military part of the story, is really a story about responsibility. Ken Chow, the lead character, enlisting as an irresponsible man, but turns over a new leaf when his dad gets a major stroke and half paralyzed in a wheelchair.
Channel 8 drama fashion.
Yeah, I mean, this is the issue I have with a lot of his films, that I wish sometimes that I feel sometimes it's a bigger crime than propaganda, because I think some of us, in fact many of us, are intelligent enough to tell what's good, and you don't. This is not TV lah. You don't need public educational values. I'm in touch with some of the filmmakers in the community. Not everyone is in full support of this, because what does the success, a $7 million, $6 million success of this film tell? What kind of message is it telling to us filmmakers? That we all have to make films like that, because no film has come close to this record except his own Money No Enough. And it's I mean, some people would say it's something very happy for the industry. Like I read on Facebook the other day, someone commented, like one of the industry leaders, that hey, with Our Boys to Men, I think Singapore finally has a film industry.
Oh gosh, that is just
I was like, I wanted to comment on her posting lah, to say, do you know how much I was paid on the set of Our Boys to Men? But of course I didn't do that lah. I think it would have been ugly. But I just, some people actually think, but you have the other camp of people who feel that, hey, does that mean that art movies will never survive? There's no space for alternative voices or different styles? What do you think it tells? Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think generally Neo is just a very commercial filmmaker. He has a very commercial eye, which happens to appeal to the majority masses, like you said also. So I don't necessarily think that it signifies the death of art films or the proliferation of these kind of sell-out, propagandish kind of films. It's just a continuation of Neo's winning trademark, which is slapstick, and it all comes together timely and nicely for him. So I mean, congrats to him.
I think that there is this really big dichotomy. There's this dichotomy in Singapore, like binary, where it's either very commercial or very artsy. And it isn't like in Hollywood, where you really have films that actually blend
the middle.
They really toe the line, and they are in the middle ground. But
Yeah, so to me that's a very problematic thing lah. And I think that even though my taste tends towards the more like art house films, okay, I also really like going for like the more commercial stuff. But the commercial stuff are very problematic to me. And like what you said, they just perpetuate this idea of family, like very superficial idea of family and what it means to be a good citizen and what it means to be Singaporean. And all these notions I find very superficial and very problematic for me. Which is why also when I review, these films on SINdie, I tend to be a little bit harsher and not so kind. Because, I'm very worried that, if people, like some of the reviewers actually gave these films easy passes. And I felt like Our Boys to Men Part 1 didn't deserve a pass. And I feel like, when you do something like that, you are actually giving filmmakers license, or at least you are telling them it's okay, these films are good and blah blah blah.
But in a way, because of that dichotomy, I do think that, on one hand, the art house films in Singapore, they are way too obscure. Sometimes they're too subtle, too amateurish. And on the other hand, you get Jack Neo, and he's like way out slapstick and all that. But I guess that's where the appeal of Jack Neo lies, because a large portion of the films made in Singapore, they're kind of sad and very depressing at times. They want to like make a point, a satirical point, but they border on depression and stuff like that. Very dark themes.
Because ultimately, I feel a lot of Singaporeans are not really going to the cinema to watch films. I would dare to make a bold statement like that, because our lives are getting more and more stressful.
Yeah, it's true.
The trains are getting more and more crowded. It's not getting any easier for us. At the end of a 10-hour day, would you want to go to a cinema?
I totally agree. When I was watching ABTM2, I was actually thinking, this is actually pretty good, or is it just cause my life is very stressful right now?
I kind of agree. I mean, it's like, I think it comes to down to how you see cinema to be. Like, do you see it as just purely entertainment, or do you see it as purely art? I guess the best is just go in with an open mind. Like to whether it's entertainment or art. Just let it just go in with an open mind and let it affect you or let it move you in however it's meant to be.
Yeah, not always is a mix of both entertainment and art.
Yeah, it's hard to marry the both.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that most Singaporeans, the layman would be going to the cinema to be entertained, because that's what they expect, and because they have the expectation, they can't really tell the difference between a good and a bad film, so they don't really care.
In fact, if you have a lot of cheap laughs, like, hey, that's what they paid the money for, right?
Yeah. Unless it's really cheap, and it's so obvious that it's a really strained joke. I think most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But I think what the success of Our Boys to Men also shows is that it shows the full power of film as a business. That a lot of a lot of the other filmmakers don't really know how to harness as well as Jack and his team because I mean, some people are still stuck in the mentality that let's segregate out all the arty indie films, because those are not businesses, those are works, those are projects, art projects. So they can't be categorized together. But there are some other films that I feel I call these crossover directors. They are directors who have previously directed art films and now they want to make a feature film, but they haven't really thought thoroughly about the business, because it is really a business. Everything about the success of Our Boys to Men, in my opinion, has been planned. The marketing, right from the time they casted, their casting process was they tried to make YouTube viral videos out of the casting audition videos. So, and then when they shot the whole big scene in Shenton Way, it made the front page news on the Straits Times. So everything was planned, and I feel that. One thing I think the film has taught the film community is the business of filmmaking. That if you want to make money, it has to run like a business.
It is a business.
Yeah.
But I still don't think that's a reason to give it like a pass, for critics to give it a pass. And I think that
I don't know lah. I mean that's their own opinion. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the merit
I think that even if you're doing something like pure entertainment, it can be smart. It doesn't have to insult your intelligence. It doesn't have to make the father get into a car crash suddenly, and then after the car crash, the son suddenly becomes the magical good son or golden boy or something like that.
Interestingly, my friend who met Jack recently don't know whether he met Jack or he heard from someone else that Jack told him he's made his money already. Now he wants to make award-winning films.
Really?
Yes, I heard that.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was from the horse's mouth or you know he heard it through some other sources. But I think there you have it, lah. I think
Award-winning, like
yeah.
Cannes or like.
But you know the interesting thing, I think Jack has it in him after working in. He has the ideas.
I do think he
but
has good
it's-
vision.
Yeah, but it's just the when it comes to business thinking in making a film, it's a different ball game altogether. You're thinking about which stars to cast, because every star brings a certain number of audience. And you know, I disagree with some of the casting in Our Boys to Men, but you know they brought in the numbers.
I thought Chu Chu as the girlfriend was not very good. Not a very good casting, but anyway.
You thought Hui Zhen has more to say.
Okay, we shall not go there.
Okay, well we've spoken a lot. I mean, about Our Boys to Men, but I think I think it would be good if we can end this podcast, which by the way has been recorded in the Substation. So thank you, Substation, for offering the place.
Thank you.
Thank you. How would you convince the worst Jack Neo critic to watch this film? I know there are people. I'm sure there are people in your life who tell you, I would rather die than step into a cinema than watch.
Okay, Hui Zhen, go first.
I would say go into it to have a good laugh at. Okay, even where the parts were really bad, you can have a good laugh at how bad the jokes can be. But on the other hand, I would have to say that at the end of the day, it really has awesome casting and Lobang really shines. Okay, I'm not a big Lobang fangirl in the fangirl sense, but I am a fan of his acting. So go watch
so
it
long
for him.
I thought just 2 sentences only. Raymond?
For me, I would just say that remember that Jack Neo directed I'm Not Stupid, and he also wrote Money No Enough. And for me,
The Jack Neo brand
yeah,
name.
for me when I go into a Jack Neo movie, I tell myself to go in with an open mind, knowing that
Very open.
Yeah, I try very hard, and I just tell myself that Jack Neo, he has directed I'm Not Stupid, I Know Stupid, and Money No Enough. And not directed, but he wrote Money No Enough before, and those were actually really good and seminal films in the local canon. Yeah.
Well, for me it's easy lah. I don't really like this film fully, 100%. I do see flaws in this
You
film.
would tell people to watch the film because you were a part of it. It's for me.
But too bad he doesn't get a cut from the.
Hey, if I get a cut, I may say that. I will consider saying that. Okay lah, very simple. I'll just tell them, if you're really a serious film critic, right, I'm sure this is part of the vocabulary that you need.
Yeah.
So you need to make references to films like that. So this is a
That's very
landmark
true.
film.
Very, very
I mean,
true.
sorry, boring point, but I think it's true. So we've come to the end of our podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll be having more in future, so stay tuned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.